Hey friends, today we are making the best thing I've ever made, the Sword Dragon Plate Armor Assassin. Now, this is not a tutorial, but I am going to be showing every step I took to make this model. Now, the goal of this video is to be entertaining and to teach you some new tips about complex origami. Now let's start off with treating the paper. Now you might notice I'm actually treating the surface before rolling the paper onto it. This helps me avoid some unnecessary wrinkles as I am applying the paper. We're going to be treating the paper with a mixture of methylcellulose and a little bit of PVA, and I'm going to be using a paint roller instead of a paint brush. This is a lot more delicate and it's not as likely to tear the paper while applying MC. I'm also using an expired gift card to push out all the extra wrinkles, methylcellulose, and air bubbles. Now, all we got to do is let that paper dry. So, once it's dry, we get to do one of my favorite parts of making paper, and that is cutting out the square. Now, why do I like this so much? Well, after you cut off the little edges, you get to peel the paper off of the sheet. And when you get a good peel, it is so satisfying. Check out this lovely piece of 60 by 60 centimeter mulberry paper. Now the next step is a lot more tedious and probably a lot less interesting. We got to fold a 40-40 grid. It's a lot of fun to watch, trust me. And yeah, that's all the time I'm giving to gridding. But now we get to do pre-creasing, which I find a lot more interesting. For one, you get to see how I pre-crease, which is mostly in the air like this. But when you're done, you get to see all the creases that make up the model. And that's pretty satisfying. Now, before we go into folding the collapse, I like to fold it back into the stick, just like it was when it was a grid. And just like that, we have our stick. Now, we actually have to unfold it so that we can fold these pleats in first. You'll see that it's actually pretty common. We'll fold the model together and then unfold it and kind of repeat that process until we collapse. Now, once we have these pleats back together, we can start working on the texture in the middle. Now, the texture in the middle is comprised of half pleats, so we have to transition that full pleat into a half pleat, and it's quite unique. It's not a level shifter, it's just a swivel. We're definitely getting somewhere. And now that our model's folded back together, we can actually pull apart a layer to form a plate structure. Now, we're going to see this plate structure a lot, and for now, it's just going to be on the top, on the bottom, and into two half pleats in the middle. We're also going to make some more details by level shifting out the side a little bit to form some spikes. Here they are, and we're going to do the same thing on the inside, but small spikes. And here we have quite a detailed torso. Now that we're done with the torso, we can begin the legs. Now, the start of the leg collapse is actually pretty simple, but you'll notice we don't have any of the details yet. And just like before, to add the details, we need to pull apart the paper. We're going to start by adding the pleats to the legs and also folding the transition units alongside of it. We're then going to fold the leg back up and add this level shifter, and it basically just adds an extra layer sticking out through the rest of the small ones. You can see why it was important for us to get those small ones before doing the larger. Now we're going to squash fold that entire layer so that it appears to be in the middle, and we can once again do that same plate texture. Now, these plates actually took forever to fold. They're very small, and we're also folding spikes alongside of them. But we are ready for the next step, which is... wait a second. Okay, we survived. I'm going to have a fun time making that part of the tutorial, which, speaking of tutorial, comes out at 10,000 subscribers. Now we just have the arms and head left to collapse. And this is the point where I actually started to record audio, so let's listen to some folding ASMR. Now on the arms, we're in a similar spot to the legs. We have to fold in the details. And once again, this requires pulling apart the paper. Now, the same pleats and the same textures are going to be used for the arms as the legs. I kind of mentioned before, we're seeking cohesion, so it's all the same. But these plates really do take a long time to fold. A fun step is twisting this sword into place. The structure allows it to just kind of turn. Next up, we have the face. And this is probably the most difficult part of the fold. The first squash fold is a partial 80th, and the small close sinks are partial 1/60th. It's really hard and technical to keep them clean, but it allows us to have a mouth and teeth. Now this begins the first part of shaping. We're finishing up the face so that I can kind of get an estimate on how large it needs to be compared to the body. The proportions are really important, and oftentimes you make the head a little too big than it should be. After wrapping up the face, I finish up some structural details like these shoulder spikes and the belt. And as you can see, we folded a lot of details. And one thing I didn't show on camera was that this model is actually closed back. Check that out. After all that folding, I've decided the final pose. You can kind of see me fidgeting with it right here. And now it's time for wet shaping. Now for wet shaping, I'm using PVA, which is the active adhesive in most glues, and a little brush. This process reinforces the pose, and it's very tedious. It kind of just looks like this. So instead of boring y'all, I'll show you progress with funny transitions, starting with the double mouse clap. Here, you can see we're starting to shape the arms out, define elbows, and give it a little pose. The next transition is, don't scratch the camera lens. Legs. Legs, legs. And here's my favorite one, the shaky time jump bunny girl edition. And it looks like the PVA did its job. It let me keep the legs, hips, shoulders, and arms in place. Now we are far from done with our final fold. I brought these two together to kind of compare what we need to do to finish it. Now, this one is actually far worse compared to our current fold, even though they are the exact same design structure. Now you might be wondering, boys, this one doesn't look so bad. What's wrong with it? Well, I've been looking at this one every day, and each time I look at it, I like it a little less and less. I keep seeing mistakes and just awkwardness, and overall on the model, I wanted to redo it, which is why we're doing this one right here. So what exactly is wrong with this one? Well, for the first part, the pose is really awkward. In the direction he's trying to point and the way he's carrying his sword, his legs actually don't make sense. He's also a little bit what we call rubber leggy, where the knee is not defined at all. And this is mainly due to the pleats, which normally are supposed to add detail, but they take away shape from the leg. Another big thing is that even though his helmet is cool, he's got no neck, and having no neck is just really awkward proportionally. Now, we fixed a couple of those things with our current fold. We swapped out the head for a detailed face, neck, and hood. I think that was a great change, as well as giving him a more realistic, still dynamic pose. Now, let's focus on those legs. So, we have rubber leg syndrome here with underdeveloped shaping, and we have fixed legs here. Now, we still have underdeveloped shaping. We started to block out areas for the knee pads, but these pleats and spikes are still distracting from the overall form of what a leg should be. So to fix that, we are going to be doing something called tertiary shaping, where we're taking the existing structures and adding details just using the surface of the paper. That's going to balance out the detail between the legs and the torso to make it more balanced and overall more impressive. And we can take one more look on this side where we can see a lot of detail pushing in the pleats and the plates up into torso and the arms, but it needs to be matched somehow by the legs. Let's go do that. The tertiary shaping I'm going to add is bevels to each and every single one of these little plates. Let's start with this big one, and you can kind of see how it's formed. I'm very carefully pinching around and then folding it in to get the detail. And now for the leg. Now, you can really see that this has added a ton of texture to those plates, and it'll allow me to really define the leg shape. I'm going to do this for the rest of the model, but I don't want to spoil it. So get ready to see the Sword Dragonplay Armor Assassin.